Good morning. Guess what day it is? It's June 27th. There are a couple of things going on today. It's National Bingo Day and it's Helen Keller Day. So I'm going to tell you some things about Helen Keller, and this comes from the Perkins School for the Blind. Helen Keller was their most famous student, and Annie Sullivan, her teacher, comes in a close second. This is the story of the little girl who was deaf-blind and learned to communicate when her teacher spilled water into her hand, and this was made famous in the movie called The Miracle Worker. Since 1837, Perkins has been educating children who can neither see nor hear. Deaf-blind education has evolved over the decades, and today Perkins educators use a variety of methods to challenge each student to reach their potential and grow. Of course, Helen Keller grew up to become a household name as an author, political activist, and advocate for the rights of people with disabilities. She was the first person with deaf blindness to earn a college degree from Radcliffe, from which she graduated cum laude in 1904 with a bachelor's degree. She was great friends with Mark Twain. When they met in person, Keller was able to identify Twain by his distinctive tobacco-infused scent. She worked the vaudeville circuit. In 1920, Keller and Sullivan began a 5-year stint in vaudeville to supplement their dwindling finances. Touted as the eighth wonder of the world, Keller performed a 20-minute show where she told her life story in her own words, translated by Sullivan. She was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize in 1953. The nomination came after Keller visited the Mid-East in 1952 and met with local leaders to advocate for the rights of those who were blind or disabled. She secured a promise from Egypt's Minister of Education to create secondary schools for the blind that would lead to a college education. The legacy of her visit still lives on at the Helen Keller School in Jerusalem, Israel. She was extremely political. In addition to being a member of the Socialist Party, unfortunately, Keller was a founder of the American Civil Liberties Union. Everybody's heard of that. She was an outspoken advocate for women's rights and a strong supporter of birth control. She fell in love and almost eloped. Keller was in her late 30s when Sullivan fell suddenly ill. Keller brought in a private secretary named Peter Fagan, with whom she fell in love and planned to elope. But her family strongly objected, and so she did not marry. She remains influential and respected even after her death. In 1999, her name appeared on Time magazine's list of the 100 most important figures of the 20th century, alongside such iconic figures as Albert Einstein, Franklin Roosevelt, Mahatma Gandhi. That's an impressive accomplishment for anyone. So much more for a woman who couldn't see or hear. Keller was afflicted at the age of 19 months with an illness that left her blind and deaf. So she did hear before that. She was examined by Alexander Graham Bell at the age of 6. As a result, he sent to her a 20-year-old teacher, Annie Sullivan, from the Perkins Institute for the Blind in Boston, which Bell's son-in-law directed. Sullivan, a remarkable teacher, remained with Keller from March 1887 until her own death in October 1936. Helen Keller's amazing life makes me think of a story in the Bible. It's not about a blind man, but about a lame one. Listen to John 5:2-9. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethsaida, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of sick people, blind, lame, paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain time into the pool and stirred up the water. Then whoever stepped in first, after the stirring of the water, was made well of whatever disease he had. Now a certain man who was there who had an infirmity 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he already had been in that condition a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, but while I'm coming, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Rise, take up your bed and walk." And immediately the man was made well, took up his bed and walked. And that was the Sabbath. This man did not do like Helen Keller. He didn't try to make the best of his situation. He lay there waiting for someone else to do it for him. Jesus asked him a question that to most would seem like an obvious question or answer. Do you want to be made well? Notice the man's answer was not about what he would do, but about what others should do for him. But then the man had to make a decision about his own life. Jesus told him to get up, take up his bed, and walk. So, that time, he decided to trust Jesus' power. He was healed. Maybe you feel stuck today. Maybe you've been stuck for a long time. Trust Jesus today. Get up and get moving.